Hello. This concert is part of both the Sound Festival in Aberdeen, Scotland, and the Brandon University New Music Festival in Canada, and involves musicians from both countries. So welcome to you, whether you're listening from Canada or Scotland or anywhere else in the world. You can watch this event for free, but if you're able to contribute, you can purchase a ticket by following the link at the bottom of the YouTube page description, and we'd be most grateful for any contributions. This is the only properly live concert in the festival. The musicians you're going to hear today are all performing from their own houses via Zoom. The Scottish musicians are part of Any Enemy, North East Scotland's new music ensemble, and the Canadians are part of the Brandon University New Music Ensemble. This project is one of the positive outcomes of lockdown. We at Sound initiated a lockdown composing project for composers to compose on Zoom in May of last year, and the live Zoom concert was heard by Megumi Masaki, who's with me here. Megumi got in touch with us as she was interested in doing something similar with her new music ensemble, and here we are performing a number of new joint commissions. You may or may not be aware of the difficulties of performing via Zoom, but there are many challenges, not least of which are time lags and the problems with broadband that we all experience daily. So the composers in the concert have had to write pieces to take this into account. You'll have a chance to chat with them after the concert, and you can interact through the YouTube channel, and we'll try and combine your questions into the discussion at the end of the concert. Because of the multiple challenges of doing this live, please be understanding if things go wrong at any point. There'll be 5 pieces played today. The first is Pete Stollery's Social Distancing. The second is Melody McKiver's All My Requests. The third is Michael Ducharme's Social Bubbles. The fourth is Keith Hamel's 3 Years. And the final one is Ollie Hawker's It's More Than Just Me to Me. Each of the composers will do a short introduction to their pieces before they're performed. Anyway, enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Megumi now, and I do hope you enjoy the concert.
Thank you so much, Fiona. This is a huge honour for us, and I'd like to read, as in Canadian tradition before all of our events, a land acknowledgement, which recognises and respects Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Brandon University's School of Music is located on Treaty 2 lands. These lands are the traditional homelands of the Dakota, Anishinaabe, Oji-Cree, Cree, Dene, and Métis peoples, whom we thank for their ongoing patience and hospitality.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Fiona.
I was about to say thank you, Megumi. And we're now going to pass over. Megumi and I are going to leave you now, and we'll be back at the end of the concert. We're going to pass over to Pete to introduce his piece. Thanks.
Thank you, Fiona. Good evening, everybody. My piece, Social Distancing, is in 5 sections, which consists of, each of the sections is the same, consists of a solo, and that soloist is then joined by another instrumentalist. And each of them are improvising from a group of notes that I've given them. And then after they have played together a duet, the rest of the ensemble comes in with a 2-chord sequence, if you like. And the idea behind this is quite a simple one. I found in the first lockdown, whenever I was out for a walk on my own and someone was coming towards me to do the social distancing thing of keeping 2 meters apart, quite often you wouldn't know which way to move, to your right or to your left. And this kind of dance would happen, hence the title, Social Distancing or Social dancing. The rest of the ensemble, they kind of form a family group that's on the other side of the road, who come in and comment on this social dancing that's going on. So there are 5 occasions where this happens throughout the piece, and everyone in both of the ensembles gets the opportunity to play at some point. So here's social distancing.
My name is Melody McKiver. I am the composer of the second piece, which is called All of My Requests, and it is an arrangement of a poem written by the Indigenous author Brandy Bird. Brandy was unable to join us on the Zoom portion, but is with us watching over on YouTube and is keeping an eye on the chats. So Brandy's also available to participate by text if we have any questions afterwards. So I'd really like to thank Brandy for allowing the use of their beautiful words, as well as both Sound Scotland and Any Enemy for actualizing this piece, which is written for soprano and mixed instrumentation. Miigwech.
Ask for a room that doesn't shake when the earth moves. A room that isn't mine, stand in the doorway. Ask for a body that can fold and fold again. A house built from bones I found on the street. Ask for words that aren't strangers in my mouth. A vocabulary of animals I've killed and eaten. Ask for people's names and birthdays. A time of death, a circle made of sinew. Ask for nights I stayed up late, knowing I am going to die. A dream catcher I made out of felt and dental floss. Ask for a mouth with white teeth. A hunger that's red muscle, white body. Ask for a door. Oh, the shape of
Hi, I'm Michael Ducharme, composer of the next piece, Social Bubbles. My piece explores the idea of contrasting groups of instruments forming social bubbles with one another. It is divided into 5 short movements. Movements 1, 3, and 5 feature the soprano and piano. The soprano is singing lines stated by Dr. Bonnie Henry from the televised COVID-19 news briefings in British Columbia. The second and fourth movements feature improvisation among the other instrumentalists, who essentially start off isolated and form social bubbles with one another. The soprano sets up the story upon which these improvisations build. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy.
Is not black and white, and that is the challenge that we're all going to face. things that we need to think about again.
Hello, my name is Keith Hamel, and my composition, 3 Years, is a setting of the poem 3 Years She Grew in Sun and Shower by William Wordsworth. This is a poem about grief after the death of a young child. And I thought that a poem about mourning and coming to terms with tragedy seemed appropriate for a piece written during COVID. We're all grieving in many ways, not just for the incredible loss of life due to COVID, but also from the loss of the things we love to do, whether those be social interactions, music, sports, playing together with one another, making music together. I also wanted to say that of course, the internet has an impact on the delivery of the music. And as you notice, instruments will cut in and cut out from time to time. And for me, this is as if doors are opening and closing during the performance. And this also seemed appropriate. It's as if our ability to communicate with one another is being hampered to some degree as the performance is taking place. I wanted to thank the two ensembles for giving me this opportunity, and I hope you enjoy the piece. Thank you.
She grew. And this child I to myself will take. Be mine, make thee
Myself will to my darling be both law and improv. And with me the girl in rock, in earth and heaven, in glade and wood. I'll feel and oversee.
He shall be sportive of the fawn that wailed with glee across the lawn, or up the mountainous brink. There shall be
she shall lean her ear in many a sea. A rivulet stands, wave of wind.
Thus nature spake.
Hello, my name is Ollie Hawker, and my piece, It's More Than Just MIDI to Me, was written in May of last year. And it was kind of largely an experiment in seeing how I could use kind of non-traditional notation over Zoom to get something out of the medium. So in a second, I'm going to share my screen and show you and the musicians a max patch that I made that will display a kind of visual score that uses real-time random number generators to produce a series of graphs that the musicians interpret. Kind of similar to a MIDI roll on a computer. And as the piece progresses, the kind of randomness of these notes reduces. So at the start, it can produce any kind of note at any time, whereas by the end, there's a certain range for each instrument, and they're all playing at a certain time. And so it kind of goes from this, the structure of the piece is from kind of confusion to clarity, which I find to be a very beautiful structure. So I will share my screen, and I hope you enjoy it.
That was amazing. We got through it in one piece. Well done, everyone. It's a huge challenge. I don't know if those of you are watching and listening are aware of how difficult that is to do. And apologies for not seeing the musicians in the last piece. Again, that was just one of the effects of Zoom. Yes, we couldn't share screen and show the musicians all at the same time. Now, I don't know if, is everybody here? Can somebody nod? Sorry, I can't see. It's slightly complicated on Zoom. Yeah. So we're going to have a quick question and answer now with the composers, just to get a bit more feel for how they went about composing for this. I'm going to start with the composer with the question to Pete, who's been doing this for the longest, really. Perhaps, Pete, you could start off by explaining the challenges involved in playing music on Zoom, which would affect the way, as composers, you wrote your works.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is there is no guarantee that anything will happen at the time that you want it to happen. And so anything like a chord when everyone has to play at the same time is out. And the reason for that is down to the different qualities of broadband that everyone has, the time lag that there will be inevitably between here, Scotland and Canada, lots of idiosyncrasies and things that are just out there in the internet. So this means that that is one of the problems. Nothing can actually coincide. If it does, it's a happy accident. And so that's probably the main constraint for all of us as composers, was that ability to be able to keep time. And that inevitably led on to other issues, or things like how we listen as musicians when we're playing in an ensemble, and we listen for cues. We listen to, we know that we're meant to be playing at the same time as someone else, or that we follow another instrument. Now, sometimes that happens, but other times you can't necessarily guarantee. So all of this has to be built in to the pieces. I loved Keith's explanation of this idea of opening doors, because that's exactly what it is. Because another limitation that Zoom has is that it's practically impossible to get more than 3 or 4 sounds simultaneously happening. And that's just because Zoom was built not for musical performance like this, but for us to be able to talk to each other. And so it has these very clever things in there that will cut out any background sounds or things that it doesn't recognize as speech, unless you disable those settings. And if you disable those settings, you bring other things in, like noise and stuff like that. So it's actually quite a precarious environment as a composer to be working in, because none of the things that you expect to happen actually happen. So all of this had to be thought about by the composers. And unfortunately, no one's internet went down. But if that had happened, then we'd have had to have pieces that would allow for a football team can still play with 10 players if one of them gets sent off. It was a bit like that, I think, with this as well.
It'd be nice to actually pass over to the other composers now, and just if each of you could talk a little about how you approached your works and whether you had to adapt, between when you'd first written them and after the rehearsals, whether you'd adapt them in order to make them work, and what methods did you use to cue people in at the right place? Because you all used different ways of doing that. I think it would just be really interesting for the audience to be able to hear a bit about that. I don't know who'd like to go first, or whether I should just pick someone. Keith has unmuted.
Sure. Yes, as Pete says, there are a lot of challenges to working this way. And I just wanted to add to what Pete said, is that all of the listeners are also hearing a different mix. So it's not just that there's sort of one version of the piece. In fact, what one person hears through their internet may not be the same as what someone else hears through their internet, which makes it interesting. It's like going to the same concert, but everybody has heard a slightly different version of the piece. For my piece, we ended up using a counter as a way of a timer on screen as a way of coordinating everyone. Even though each of the individual parts had cues in them of the other instruments, we found in rehearsals that it became a problem if a cue didn't come through, so that the player suddenly felt there was supposed to be a flute line there and I didn't hear it. Should I still come in? So for me, we decided that the timer was the most reliable way. The piece was composed using seconds. And so if everyone just coordinates with the timer, then everything should more or less be in sync, rather than relying on cues which you might or might not hear.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Thanks, Keith, for that explanation. Who'd like to go next? Melody.
Sure. So for me, approaching the piece, I really wanted to emphasize the text setting. So Brandy's poetry was really delivered as, I guess, a vehicle for the soprano parts. And congrats as well to Azaria for a really wonderful performance today. And my approach to that was to really limit the amount of musicians performing at the same time. So it was written kind of in a rough call and response format between the ensemble, with a lot of staggered entrances, where I was really not trying to have more than one or two musicians at the same time, and also to take care that nothing too rhythmically complex would be happening. So I was trying to just write a lot of more sustained pitches to try and support the soprano, but also recognizing that everyone was kind of flying solo and we needed to keep the ensemble together as best as possible over Zoom. So having Megumi assist with the rehearsals definitely did a lot as well. And some of the adaptations that I found was, originally I was envisioning a lot of sustained non-durational pitches just kind of continuing until the sound died out, which I think ultimately would still work better in person, because with the Zoom format, any noise someone shuffles their chair, that's going to almost start competing with all the other audio signals that are coming through at the same time. So that was, I would say, probably the biggest modification that we made in the rehearsal process, was to have the musicians be very mindful of when they would cut off their pitch, because it would allow someone else to kind of enter, just because of how Zoom was throttling the audio. And otherwise, in terms of getting lost in the format, though we didn't take a timer approach like some of the other pieces did. First, we added a lot of rehearsal markings to give people a better ballpark. And then ultimately, I submitted to the performers essentially a version of almost a condensed score for each performer, so that they had as many cues as possible, especially to be able to follow along the text of the soprano and have that as a goalpost. And any other. So I definitely provided quite a few cues up front, anticipating this need, and performers requested even further, just so that, because some found it easier to play off of the score, but rather than working off of 20 pages, I provided condensed parts that would give them, especially the soprano cues, so they could follow more easily.
Thanks, Melody. Michael, Ollie? Michael's away.
I'll go next. So when I was composing the piece, I was thinking very much about making sure that the soprano was heard at all times as much as possible. And so what I did for that is I sort of adopted a recitative style almost, where the piano would play a chord, and then after a bit the soprano would sing something, and that would basically repeat over and over again, to ensure that the soprano would always be heard. And for the other two movements, for the ones with the improvisation, what I was thinking about was, for one thing, having just two, maybe three people playing at once, and that was one thing. And the other consideration was that I wanted to make it easy for the Brandon University New Music Ensemble to rehearse. So basically, the different movements are split up into different groups of instruments so that you don't have to have everybody rehearsing at once. Obviously, when the ensemble gets this big, some of those rehearsal advantages are somewhat disappearing. So it's a little bit more challenging to put together, I would say, for this size of ensemble, just coordinating everything. So probably what I would have done for this size of ensemble is actually had things coordinated through a max patch to actually cue people in, because that would probably be the most reliable way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between when you had 10 musicians of any enemy and then adding Brandon University. Certainly felt in the rehearsals that that becomes even more complicated. Ollie, who experienced both, maybe you could share, especially as you used a completely different artistic and practical way of doing it than
similar to what Keith and Michael were saying about having a kind of central clock was the first. When I kind of thought of how can we make music work on Zoom, the central clock was the first idea I had, because if you've got musician A and musician B trying to communicate with each other, then you've got the lag of musician A going out and musician B going in. So you've got two sets of lag that can vary between everyone. Whereas if you have a central clock, you've still got the lag going, the lag going out of the central clock is the same for everyone because it's based on my internet. So then even though everyone's receiving its lag is slightly different, you've kind of eliminated half of the variable. So you can, I was maybe a bit ambitious with my piece when I first started writing it, because I thought that bit part at the end where everyone's playing in regimented blocks would have a kind of a very strong rhythm to it, which, it didn't in the end because of the way Zoom works, but it still kind of has a sense of pulse-ish, I'd say, is a fair enough thing to say. That I think this kind of idea of a central clock is quite key to, and also in making the score, one of the musicians mentioned in rehearsal that it kind of feels like a video game or something, which I quite liked, and it kind of is very appropriate to this idea that we're all sitting and staring at our screens while we play this. So yeah.
Can I just add something, follow on from what Ollie was saying there about the lag? Is I actually just gave up on worrying about that.
That's the other solution.
Yeah, because, and actually, I preferred it that way, because what you get then I have a solo which lasts for 15 seconds. And then another, someone else joins a duet, which lasts for another 15 seconds. And then a chord, which lasts for 15 seconds. And then another chord, which lasts for 15 seconds. Each player needs to just roughly gauge what 15 seconds is. They could use their own clock, but I didn't want a clock on the screen, because I actually quite liked the fact that things were moving from, particularly in the chords, that they were moving, smearing into each other rather than going deliberately into each other. So you get this kind of broken effect because only 3 or 4 instruments are sounding at the same time. But you get that added to the fact that some people move on to the second chord whilst people are still on the first one, and then gradually everyone moves to the second one. And I like that kind of randomness that was built in, and Zoom actually helped with that kind of idea.
I'm going to go and see if there are any questions on WhatsApp. Pete, Megumi, could you maybe just, while I do that, just talk a bit about the rehearsal?
Well,
because thinking that was complicated in itself.
It really was. Before I do that, I just want to say bravo to all the musicians, the composers. That was just absolutely fabulous performance, and that kind of goes with the theme of rehearsals. One of the really challenges, I guess, of this pandemic and our lockdown is that we're all isolated. Yet one of the absolutely amazing things that's come out of this is the fact that we can connect and we can collaborate and rehearse together. So also it gave us all a little bit more time so we could actually have this collaboration, a true collaboration with all of the composers. As you heard, all 5 pieces are a completely different approaches to these challenges that Zoom Zoom presents, that like long distance rehearsing presents, aesthetically also approach. When we were thinking about this project, I was really thinking about, okay, which composers really have tech knowledge also. I think it was really important that they were all super tech savvy on their own right, in their own different ways, but that was also key to selecting who we would choose as a commissioned composer for this project. But also, like, it was just for the performers to learn so much from each composer, not only about their composition, but how to rehearse, how to perform, how to listen completely differently in this format and in this way has just been incredible. And like, kudos to each of the composers for their flexibility. We've been rehearsing this since September, and the pieces have evolved and changed. We've been able to ask questions, request different cues, as Melody said. Michael's piece changed and evolved all the way through, and we're just, it's just been such a learning and skill building experience, all of these rehearsals. Ollie has come and helped us with our tech overall every week, just to make sure that the musicians understood what to do with the tech and why, which is, of course, important, more than just pushing buttons. But Ollie really patiently explained each week, how to go about things, how to set things up. And so we're really grateful. It was like a true collaboration through every single rehearsal with all 5 of the composers. And that's just such a unique experience for all of the musicians.
Thanks, Megumi. I'm just going to pop in with some questions from WhatsApp. One question mainly from Clara Jane, who said it's a great concert. And she's got a question for Melody. Melody, when setting a poem from a living person, how much did it feel like a collaboration? Or was it given with the trust that you could set it in the way it needed? Is that clear? Might need to unmute.
There we go. Yeah, I think a bit of both, because part of my values in approaching this project is that I am an Anishinaabe person from Treaty 3, which is about 500 kilometers east of Brandon, so I do have Manitoba connections and relations, but I'm myself not from the prairies. So originally I was like, I want to work with an Indigenous poet, and then a couple of people recommended the work of Brandy Bird, so I got a chance to familiarize myself with their work. I reached out to Brandy, and they're really enthusiastic about the project, and Brandy might still be watching on YouTube as well, so feel free to chime in on the chat there as well. And once we established that, I think I went with trying to have a really informed consent model of I would like to use your work. This is the format. There won't be other Indigenous artists performing that, but here's my relation to it. Your work, I'd like to do so as respectfully as possible, and just trying to give that information up front, and keeping Brandy informed throughout the process was something I tried to do to the best of my abilities as well. I'm grateful that they were able to join us virtually over Zoom today, and I think more broadly the collaborative approach is something I really value in my work, especially centering Indigenous voices, and for me wanting to ensure that to share whatever relative limelight we receive to support the work of emerging artists with Manitoba connections as well when I'm working with Brandon was something that I really want to emphasize throughout this project, and hopefully we succeeded.
Thanks, Melody. Has anybody got any other things, composers that they'd like to say or add before we conclude this? Just one comment from the YouTube stream that I'd like to share is that Marvin the Exile says John Cage would have loved the Zoom setup, which is quite a nice one.
It's amazing to think what he would be doing with Zoom right now, actually, yeah, because of all the chance elements that there are, but the opportunity to get people all over the world playing at the same time. I think he'd love it.
That's great. Could we, before we finish off, could we call all the musicians back to take a sort of final bow? Well, as as much of a bow as you can do when there's lots of people on the screen. Here they all come. Is that everybody? Yeah, I think that's everybody. So. Well done, everyone. That was
really fantastic. I just, just looking at my screen just makes me tear up. That in the middle of our cold winter, that we can feel this connection, feel each other through the music. These are world premieres of these pieces. We're so honored in so many ways, and just really feel that through music we can heal each other, we can connect with each other, and stay well, both in mind and in heart, is so terribly, terribly important. And for Brandon University to allow us to go forward with this vision, the School of Music, I would just like to thank so much Greg Gation, our leader, our brave leader at the School of Music, our dean, to support us fully in this collaboration with Sound Scotland. Pete Stollery, you've just been amazing and inspiring with this Project Lockdown, composing, and I'm going to add performing. So thank you for creating this lifeline and this creative really start, and I hope that we'll continue this really fabulous collaboration even when we're out of lockdown. So bravo.
Yeah, thank you, Megumi. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you and with the Brandon University New Music Ensemble, and to meet three new composers. I knew of Keith's work, but I hadn't come across Michael or Melody before, so it's great to have met you and your music as well. So congratulations, everybody. You're fantastic.
Thank you very much, everyone. We're going to have to leave it there because time is running on. The next event is at 8 p.m. UK time and is a performance of Phil Cashian's Scenes from the Life of Viscount Medado for horn and piano, and a discussion with composers Phil Cashian, Aileen Sweeney, and Rylan Gleave. Rylan also happens to be signing at the moment. Thank you, Rylan, but he's coming back as a composer in the next concert. And they're going to talk about their new pieces, which were due to be performed this January, but because of COVID, we were unable to perform them. So we're going to discuss them instead while waiting to be able to perform them in the future. We've also got our daily Sound Social at 9:30 on Zoom, where we chat about the day's music. And tonight we have a special short film to show you and chat about as well, which is an offshoot from last year's project, We Need to Talk, with cellists Noémie Boutin and Matthew Sharp. If you want to come to the Zoom, you can register on our website to receive the login details for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see you soon.